Hello, my name's Florence. Welcome to the theobspod. I'm an NHS obstetrician, hoping to share some thoughts and experiences about my working life. Perhaps you enjoy Call the Midwife, maybe birth fascinates you, or you're simply curious about what exactly an obstetrician is. You might be pregnant and preparing for birth. Perhaps you work in maternity and want to know what makes your obstetric colleagues tick, or you want some fresh ideas and inspiration. Whichever of these is the case, and for that matter, anyone else that's interested, the theobspod is for you. Episode 151, Compassion. Today's episode is going to be short and sweet. I almost didn't do an episode. It's a very difficult week, with junior doctor strikes literally about to commence as I'm recording this, followed by consultant strikes the following week. And let's not forget, these strikes are on the background of incredible staffing shortages in the NHS at the moment. Plus, on top of that, in maternity, we have to add in the constant headlines about how maternity care is failing in different places up and down the country. So why have I chosen to talk about compassion today? It's a topic that came to mind for two reasons this week. The first is an article that I saw circulating on Twitter. Compassion for midwives, the missing element in workplace culture for midwives globally. This detailed not only the importance of compassion, but the way that workplaces around the world crush this compassion out of us. It talked about midwives all over the world working in very challenging situations where they're not valued, where they may not have a break, in some places where they don't even have a toilet to use. It discussed examples from various different countries, both northern and southern hemisphere, where the system, the service in which midwives are working, doesn't have any compassion or value for those members of staff. Why is this relevant, you might ask? Well, if there isn't compassion for midwives and staff working, then there's all sorts of correlations with how those midwives then in turn have compassion or not for the women that they're caring for. What is compassion? Looking up a definition to record today's podcast, compassion is defined as sympathetic pity and concern for the suffering or misfortune of others. I'm not sure I like the word pity, but certainly sympathy is very important. I like to think more about empathy, trying to imagine what it must feel like for the women or family in front of me, and trying my best to look after them and care for them at that moment in time, whatever their need might be. It's not surprising that compassion is one of the 6 C's, the cornerstone of UK nursing and midwifery practice. But yes, I'm not a midwife or nurse. I'm an obstetrician. And yes, compassion is important for us too. But why have I chosen this topic? Well, also on Twitter this week, I saw that the GMC survey, that's the General Medical Council survey of trainees and trainers, came out. And the latest survey shows an increase in burnout, with a higher proportion of both trainees and trainers describing burnout or answering negatively to those questions. They concluded that 23% of trainees were at high risk of burnout and 52% of trainers were at risk of burnout. there's an enormous amount of value in the deeper results of the GMC training survey and all sorts of aspects of discrimination, microaggressions, negative comments and behaviours, which I'm not going to delve into today. It's far too big a topic. Okay, maybe the GMC survey is a small number of people. Maybe those people at risk of burnout. Maybe those are the people that answer. Maybe it skews the results. But no. 70,000 doctors in the UK answered the survey. That's 74%. And the reason that I'm turning to compassion and to discuss this today is that obstetrics and gynecology is almost the top of the list. Obstetrics and gynecology has had an increase in trainees at risk of burnout by 5 percentage points in this year alone. Yes, we're not top of the list, that's emergency medicine, but we're second to top. That can't be a good thing. Trainers also have massively increased risk of burnout in obstetrics and gynecology in the last year. And workload intensity, again, second from top. 61 or 62% in the last few years as being heavy or very heavy, intense workload. Even more worrying is that when you look at workplace behaviours, obstetrics and gynecology again comes up highly, with nearly 1 in 10 obstetrics and gynecology trainees saying they experienced microaggressions, negative comments or oppressive body language from colleagues almost weekly. This is terrible. We need action. So to record this episode, I turned to the RCOG, the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, because I knew they'd done a lot of work on this. It's really sad when you turn to the website to see that the RCOG appointed a workplace behaviour advisor back in 2013. That's 10 years ago. Have we made so little progress in that time? There is an excellent workplace behaviours toolkit, which was launched in 2021. It's very easy to click on the links and work your way through some videos. I would urge you to do so. I did so today, preparing this episode. But I started with talking about compassion. And compassion has to start with ourselves. I learnt the hard way through burnout, exhaustion, and having to take time off work unwell, that actually I could only hope to care for others if I could care for myself first. It always seemed to me that looking after myself was self-indulgent, not worthwhile, and played no part in me being able to do my job and care for others. Like I said, I learnt the hard way that this wasn't true. And I've worked extremely hard to rebalance my life. My burnout was almost career-ending. I spend a lot of time in my clinical work telling women to listen to their bodies, be guided by their bodies, whether that's in late pregnancy or following birth. I often tell women, do what your body is happy doing. If your body's in pain, if it's too much, you're exhausted, then you need to slow down, or you need to take more painkillers. You need to listen to your body. It's guiding you. It's telling you what it can and can't manage. And for us, as health professionals, we need to do the same. Our bodies will tell us what we can and can't manage. So I'm not going to give you a sticking plaster of go for a walk, or listen to some music, or take a little bit of time to do some well-being in inverted commas and it will all sort itself out. It won't. But what I am saying to you for my zesty bit today is start with yourself. Start by looking after yourself, whether you're a doctor, a midwife, a pregnant woman, or a new parent. Try and do what might work for you. For me, it's home video yoga that grounds me when I come in from work. It's walking my dog. It's doing my garden, which I'm fortunate enough to have. And it's doing things with family and friends. I went away with a friend overnight last week and it refreshed me, re-energized me. And that energy, enthusiasm, freshness, I can then bring back to work, to the rest of my team and to the people I'm caring for. So find what works for you and maybe talk about it a bit at work. What are the rest of your team at the beginning of a shift doing to look after themselves? Sometimes that chit-chat of the latest holiday they've been on, or looking at the wedding pictures of their friend, or looking at their puppy, that isn't fluff, that isn't unnecessary distraction from the work in front of us. That is compassion. That is looking after one another. And if we do that for each other and for ourselves, then that's how we can best look after the families under our care. I very much hope you found this episode of the theobspod interesting. If you have, it'd be fantastic if you could subscribe, rate and review on whatever platform you find your podcasts, as well as recommending the theobspod to anyone you think might find it interesting. There's also tons of episodes to explore in my back catalogue, from clinical topics, my career and journey as an obstetrician, and life in the NHS more generally. I'd like to assure women I care for that I take confidentiality very seriously and take great care not to use any patient identifiable information unless I have expressly asked the permission of the person involved on that rare occasion when it's been absolutely necessary. If you found this episode interesting and want to explore the subject a little more deeply, don't forget to take a look at the programme notes where I've attached some links. If you want to get in touch to suggest topics for future episodes, you can find me at theobspod on Twitter and Instagram, and you can email me theobspod@gmail.com. Finally, it's very important to me to keep the theobspod free and accessible to as many people as possible. But it does cost me a very small amount to keep it going and keep it live on the internet. So if you've enjoyed my episodes and by chance you do have a tiny bit to spare, you can now contribute to keep the podcast going and keep it free via my link to buy me a coffee. Don't feel under any obligation, but if you'd like to contribute, you now can. Thank you for listening.